Our brains are actually wired for story. The idea of being able to overcome a challenge and reach an end goal or a desire is really what moves humanity forward, is being driven by a greater ending than where we are today.
Hey, hey, my feel good friend, and welcome back to the Feel Good Social Podcast. I am so excited to share today's guest with you. Her name is Ché, like the butter, and she is just a super cool human. I absolutely loved chatting with her. We align so freaking much when it comes to just marketing yourself, creating your messaging, and especially telling your brand story, which is what Ché is just an expert in. And you will hear that in the way she tells her brand story in the conversation that we have today. And so I just cannot wait to dive into this conversation. But before we do, I do want to remind you, if you enjoy the Feel Good Social Podcast, if you really like this conversation today with Ché, I would absolutely love for you to share it to her Instagram stories or just share it with a friend who could also use to hear it. If you do, please connect with me on Instagram. I'm at Feel Good Social. I would love to connect with you, and I know Ché would as well. So make sure you definitely do that if you're feeling the impulse to it all during this conversation. All right, my friend, let's go ahead and dive into this awesome chat with this awesome woman. Hey, friend, and welcome to the Feel Good Social Podcast. I'm your host, Kinsey, and I'm here to help you market your business in a genuine way that works without wasting your precious time. On this show, we chat about social media strategy and mindset tips with a focus on, you guessed it, feeling good. So sit back, relax, and enjoy some genuine conversation for the good of your biz. Have you been wanting to create a new website? My friend, I have just the website template shop for you. I recently used one of the templates from the gals at Go Live HQ to create my new author website, and it could not be more awesome. Not only was the template super easy to use, I swear it was laid out perfectly already, so I customized it with my own photos and copy in like 2 hours. But also, it ended up looking so freaking beautiful in a way that I know I would not have been able to achieve if I'd started from scratch. Go Live HQ has tons of beautiful Squarespace templates so you can easily create and launch your dream website in just a few hours and not have to keep tweaking things forever until it's 6 months later and your website still isn't live. That may or may not have happened to Feel Good Social's website. So believe me, I feel you on that. And the cherry on top, the Go Live gals created a coupon code for you, my Feel Good listener. Just head to feelgoodsocial.com/go live and use the coupon code feelgoodsocial to receive 10% off your template. Again, head to feelgoodsocial.com/go live and use the code feelgoodsocial for 10% off. Pretty cool, huh? I cannot wait to see which template best fits your brand. I went with the Jada Ellis template myself for kinseyelissa.com, but it was seriously a really tough choice. So when you do, head to feelgoodsocial.com/go live and snag your new template. Make sure you send me the link to your new website because I definitely want to see it. All right, let's dive back into this episode, my friend. Hi, Ché. Oh my goodness, lady. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Kinsey. Your microphone is so sexy.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. I know. I'm always like talking into the microphone. It's actually probably so janky. Let's be honest. It's like in this little foam box that I got off of Amazon and I tried to put together, but I couldn't figure out how to like get it perfect. And so it's kind of funny, but it is like a sexy microphone. It's like Blue Yeti mic or whatever.
Entrepreneurs figuring things out.
We are. I know. Yep. Just figuring things out day by day. Lady, thank you so much for coming on the show. I did already introduce you just a little bit in the intro, but I always like to start by asking people, who are you? What do you do? Who do you serve? I'd love to hear from you in your own words.
Of course. Well, thank you so much for having me again. My name is Ché Elizaga Castro, like the butter, not Guevara, and I'm the founder of Come Alive Co., which is a brand story studio for impact-driven founders. So people who are using their people, profits, and purpose to do something good and impactful in the world. We love telling your stories and helping you get the word out of who you are and what you're here to do.
Yes, yes. And we were chatting before we started recording. I geek out so much about anything storytelling, brand story, all those things. And I also know how just important it is and how powerful your story can be in your brand for like setting you apart, all those things. I can't wait to chat with you about this. But I always do kind of like to ask people about their journey in entrepreneurship, right? Like, how did you get started in this whole thing?
Ooh, Kinsey, a story about storytelling. This is meta. I love this. Of course. Okay, so I got my start in advertising. I was working first in public relations, social media. I started my career in the advertising agency. And this was like 10 plus years ago when social media was just bursting onto the scene. I'm aging myself here, Kinsey, but with age comes experience.
Uh-huh.
And so when social media first burst onto the scene, it was exciting because it was the first time that I could actually connect to the end user of a product or a service versus trying to pitch myself to a journalist. And so this is when I really got to understand the heart of the customer. And it was so interesting that people don't want to be sold to. My background, again, is in PR and psychology. And seeing what social media was doing, it was connecting brands to their fans. It was giving brands a way to show their personalities more than just, here's my product and buy it. And so I was working in these ad agencies with huge companies like Dell and King's Hawaiian and will.i.am and GoDaddy at the Super Bowl, helping make these billionaires millions of more dollars through the power of storytelling by connecting to their customers. And I just wasn't happy, Kinsey. I was effective, but I wasn't living in my best purpose. And so I fell into this depression, and I didn't even know, I didn't have the language for what this depressive episode was, but it was like the color just seeped out of my life, which is crazy because I find myself a very joyful and optimistic person. And so I realized that I didn't want to spend my days looking forward to the weekend anymore. We spend 80% of our lives at work, I think the stat is. So why not do something that makes you come alive? And so that led me on this 6-month missions trip around the world in Hawaii, in India, and Thailand, where I was working with young women and refugees kids. And I was just really seeing that all over the world, no matter what culture they came from, America or these other countries, that women were not given the permission to be anything more than what society was telling them, whether that is to be a house mom or a wife, or even in certain countries, a prostitute, just so that she could make money for her children. And that really broke my heart because I believe that each person was made to come alive in their gifts and audacious vision. And so when I came back to San Diego, my hometown, I realized that I had this unique intersection of knowing how to build businesses and use brand story as a really authentic way to connect people, which is something that you do so well, Kinsey. So thank you again for talking to me. Using that expertise, but doing it in a way that reaches and amplifies women, who are the people that I find most joy in helping. And so that led me to start Come Alive Co., which again is a brand story studio and telling these women's stories to help them grow their businesses and to show up fully and stand apart in a saturated market.
Oh man, lady, I knew I was going to geek out in this conversation. I'm like going to gobble everything up that you say. And that's why it was so funny, guys. We were laughing before we started recording too. I was reading kind of the questionnaire that you filled out before the interview and whatnot. And I was like, this girl is a 7, right? Which you're not, which totally is okay. You don't have to be a 7 or anything on the Enneagram, but even in your story, I just relate with it so much. Everything that you're saying, it's like lighting a fire in my soul right now. You're like how you used come alive in your story. And it just like resonates so much with me because that was part of my brand story too, is finding joy in life and learning how you can make a difference and finding passion in your brand and all of those things. Like, I think that that's the best way to create a sustainable business. You know what I mean?
Totally. And I love Kinsey. And I think that's why we're kindred souls, right? Kinsey and I, before this, were just geeking out at how similar we were. And I see now why, because you also believe in using your work for a purpose. I think that when we can use our profits, which especially in the Western world in America, money talks, money has big impact and influence. But if you can help more women and leaders come alive in using that money for good, for purpose, then I truly believe we can create a better world that all of us or many of us long to see.
Yes, yes. Oh man. And I just, ugh, girl, like I love when people are just like using language in such a great way. I love that you used come alive as you told your brand story, just like nerding out about that a little bit. And your brand's name is Come Alive. Like, I know I do that with Feel Good Social too. I need to get better at it with my own brand story, like incorporating feel good so that it like just flawlessly flows from my lips every time I say it, right? So, my lady, oh, also my friends who are listening and you, if you hear any groans, Tarkin, my dog, is like deciding to snore right next to my feet right now. So I apologize for any groans you might be hearing. It's not my stomach. Okay, lady, let's go ahead and just dive straight into geeking out about brand story and whatnot. I guess, like, firstly, like, why really is it so important to hone in on your brand story? Can you just share with us a little bit about that?
Of course. So I guess let's start in the Mad Men era when advertising was really well known. Advertisers used the most outlandish product benefits to talk about why they're better than everyone else. It was like my stick's bigger than yours, right? There was such an era of competition and me being better than you. However, with social media, we're finding that people want to connect. And especially in the past 17 months of what's been going on, Kinsey, you and I know well enough that connection is more important than ever. And so the reason that storytelling is so effective is not because it tells the best parts of your brand or your product or your service. It's because it connects people in a way that we've been connecting since the days we were sitting around a fire. Our ancestors in a cave were telling stories about survival. And today we have the capability to tell stories to thrive. So to geek out about the psychology a little bit in science, our brains are actually wired for story. The idea of being able to overcome a challenge and reach an end goal or a desire is really what moves humanity forward, is being driven by a greater ending than where we are today. So storytelling is effective because not only are our brains wired for it, but because our brains are wired for it, what you're saying is 22 times or up to 22 times more memorable, they have found, when you're telling facts in a story form.
Oh my gosh. Yes, so much. And it's so funny too. I have like lived through this and I think I've shared this on the podcast. This is kind of my go-to story for that. But, I used to work in the restaurant industry and I worked at this wine restaurant, not necessarily a wine bar, but like the woman was very, very proud of her wine list, like lots and lots of different types of wines from all over the world, really great quality wines and rare wines and all of these things. And I'm a wine drinker for sure, but I'm not necessarily like a wine aficionado. You know what I mean? It was really, really hard for me to like remember all of these different wines and all that stuff. Like you're supposed to memorize the wine list. I'm really bad at memorizing things too, honestly, like facts and figures, right? But luckily, like the owner that I worked for, she understood like the power of story and all that stuff. And so in the wine trainings, it was so interesting because like I'd worked in the restaurant industry for years, but I'd never been to wine trainings like these. She made sure that like we understood the stories behind each bottle of wine, right? And she would actually try to choose a lot of different wines with stories behind them, because not only did she realize that was like easier for her waiters to remember the wines and stuff, but also like it's better for selling too, right? It was really cool.
That was really cool. And my friends and I have also a similar story where we went to a restaurant and the man was so passionate about telling us about the salsa. He basically presented it with flourish and a song. This is 1,000-year-old salsa. It's been roasted in the depths of the earth and now it is here at your table. And we're cracking up like, this is the best salsa we're ever going to eat. We just better dive into this now. And it's so interesting that you remember that, Kinsey. And actually, my husband and I were also talking last night about Marvel, which I would argue is one of the best storytellers on earth right now. And we were watching a YouTuber who breaks apart the different Marvel stories and talks about the trailers. And he turns to me, my husband turns to me and asks, "What do you think makes him so effective?" And I said, "Well, he is so passionate about the words he's saying. He's so passionate about the stories that he's sharing. He's clearly knowledgeable about it." And so a takeaway for your listeners is that when people are telling their brand story, what makes it so powerful is when you come alive, like you were mentioning, when you come alive in your story, because it is your story and you are sharing something transferable, which is that energy, which is that joy for why you do what you do. And really, it's not the words that you say, Kinsey. And this is why I don't refer to myself as just a copywriter. And you don't just tell your brand story, but you're here to live it. You're here for a purpose, on purpose, and you're here to rally people around a vision of making this world better through your product or service. And that's what your story does, is light a fire under people and make them want to come with you where you're going.
Yeah. Oh, I love this so much because as you were sharing your brand story, it was making me feel like a fire in my chest for sure. And that's something that I've experienced with Feel Good Social as well, right? Like I light up when I tell my brand story now because I've figured out how it aligns with my life, how I live within my integrity, like what I'm doing, my values, all those things. And when I tell it, I light up. And I think that, and I love what you said about the energy. We're totally going to get kind of woo here, my friends, but I totally agree. When you are telling a story, it's not just about the words. And I think that that's almost a permission slip for people in a way, because I think a lot of times people really get caught up in words, right? Like I myself am a word nerd. I absolutely love language, but I know that for a lot of people, they're like, I'm really bad at writing, or it's hard, or I can't do this, right? And so if you think about your story as it's not words, it's like this energy that you feel and emotion behind it, and also like how you light up when you tell it. Like that's almost maybe a permission slip for people, or makes it easier for people or something, you know?
Oh, that made my heart so happy, Kinsey, because it's so true. Whenever somebody tells me, I don't know what to say, I'm like, you do know what to say. It's not about the words that are holding you back. It's just about remembering who you are and why you're here. And so if you can have a conversation with someone, you can write. And you're right. I think, with marketing or anything that takes to the internet about your business, people think there's a certain formula. And when I work with my clients, it's not about here's this structure to follow. I don't want you to sound like a robot. People don't want to buy from businesses. They want to buy from people. So we really get to the heart of who are you? Why are you here? Where is it that you've been and where is it that you're trying to go? And so when you really dig into that and start to understand, like you are so much more powerful than you can see right now. Sometimes you just need someone to come alongside you and reflect that back to you. Then the words just gush out because it's all about the heart.
Yes, yes. And also just like, to bring it back to the energy real quick as well, like it's so true. That's why joy is such a cornerstone of my business, and like excitement and like the energy that you bring when you feel aligned, when you feel like you have a purpose, when all those things, right? Because that energy is so transferable and also like magnetic, right? And so that's what I teach, is to like create content from a place of joy, like create content from that aligned place, you know what I mean? When on social media, because I think you can feel that through the screen. And I love when you say that about like the brand story and storytelling. It's so true. Like the more we can show up with the energy that we want to be in, like for our business, like the more magnetic we become, I think. So
absolutely. And on that note, I would love to talk about like what brand story is according to how I define it. So brand story has been taught in different ways. Some people refer to it as your origin story or where you've been and where you're going. It's very personal. Some teachers teach it as the message that you're here to leave with your customers. So you're taking them on a journey and what you're here to achieve for them. So I like to teach brand story as 3 parts. It's what you're here to do, who you are and where you've come from. And then third, it's what makes you stand out, or your unicorn properties, I like to say, because it makes you unique. And so exactly as you're saying, I love, Kinsey, that you talk about joy, because joy as a cornerstone for you is a value that you operate your business by. And when I teach brand story, values are one of the very first things that we teach, because if we're here to help people know and like and trust us, the way that we're operating comes out of a set of values that must be consistent, because out of everything, consistency is what breeds trust. And so people listening, if you hear Kinsey saying, I'm here to bring joy to you through the way that you create content. And for me, Ché, it's about helping you come alive in your business and your life. Think about 5 to 8 different values that your business really operates from. And ask yourself questions when you make decisions, because as business owners, we're always facing decision fatigue, correct? It always comes back to those values of, how do I want to make people feel? And at the end of the day, your brand story is about how you make people feel and the action that they can take from that.
Yes. I love this. Okay, lady. So when it comes to figuring out your brand story, you just said start kind of with values and all those things, but I'd love for you to dive a little bit deeper into this, like tangible things for if someone's like, I have no idea what my brand story is, like, how do they figure it out?
Yeah, of course. So there are 2 different parts that I want to highlight of that 3-part structure I just mentioned. And actually, if you rewind this and listen to how I introduced myself, you'll see that I used that same kind of story. So the first part of your brand story that people want to know is, why are you here talking to me? What is it that you can do for me? As humans, we're not selfish necessarily, but we want to understand how people can take us along on the journey that we're already living. So like I said earlier, people are motivated by a goal. Actually, 95% of our purchasing decisions are made subconsciously, which is through our emotional center. And so whenever you introduce yourself or talk about your brand story, people want to know, what is it that you do and why? So for me, I believe that each of us were made to come alive in our unique gifts and audacious vision. And so we help you come alive in your brand story, the story that you tell others and share about your business. And so always be telling people whenever you meet them, this is who I'm working for, and this is why I'm doing it, and this is what I believe for you. And so they understand right away, not that you're a social marketer, Kinsey, or that I'm a storyteller. It's, why is it that you're here, and what is it that you can help me achieve in my life? And then secondly, in order to connect, it's telling that story of where you've come from and where you're planning to go. So again, I told my whole story of leaving my job and going on that missions trip and realizing that I'm here to help women come alive. So those 2 different portions of your story are a way to help people know what you do, who you are, and instantly breed that trust through those different connection points.
Yes. And I love this so much. It's so funny how like seriously aligned our brands are right now, because you keep saying come alive, and that like lights a fire in me for sure. And also like so much of what you teach is very similar to kind of how I teach people to bring their brands to social media, right? That's kind of like a cornerstone of my offers. It's like what I call brand vibe, honing in on your brand vibe. And I break it down into 3 different parts: story, voice, and visuals. And everything that you're saying about your story. And it's so funny. I was just chatting with my business coach the other day, and she's like, I think what you really do is help people bring their brands to life. And I'm laughing right now because come alive, like we're just so aligned, lady. And I love this. Do you know what your brand vibe is on Instagram? I have a new fun quiz that's just for you, my friend. I, of all people, know how hard it is to figure out how the heck you're supposed to translate your brand to the gram. And with this quick 7-question quiz, we will help you hone in on your brand's personality, voice, and visuals so that you can show up consistently and create content that looks beautiful and feels on brand for you. This quiz is so awesome. It's been a long time coming, and I know that you're going to have a lot of fun with it. Plus, the results will help you show up in the best way for you. If you'd like to check out our new brand vibe quiz, just head to feelgoodsocial.com/quiz. Pretty easy. Head to feelgoodsocial.com/quiz to find out what your brand's vibe is on social media and start showing up there for your brand. Okay, so love this like kind of breakdown of brand story. And you actually do have a free download that I downloaded yesterday. I think I was looking at it. Can you drop the link to that real quick, just in case people want to download like the tangible outline of your process?
Of course. Yeah. And this is a fatty download. So sit with it, light a fire before you, sip some nice cocoa, and go to feelalive.co/email, because you'll get the 3 steps to your brand story that sells there. And it breaks down what I'm talking about, the structure of a brand story and how you can tell it in a way that brings your brand story to life, like you said, Kinsey.
Yeah, I know. I love it so much. And it's an awesome download. I was looking at it yesterday, like, yep, I will. And I think that too, even if you like feel like you already have an understanding of your brand story and stuff like that, it's always really great. I love like downloading all the different freebies and like hearing different people's approach to brand story because it's always great to revisit it, I think. Do you have any mistakes that you see people making sometimes when it comes to showing up online for their brand and sharing stories and stuff like that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And first of all, I just want to say that mistakes are just jumping off points to continually hone our evolution. I've been
Mhm.
thinking about this a lot lately of like, as a recovering perfectionist, how much I never want to make mistakes. But Kinsey, I love that you also teach that, feeling good is just showing up as you are. And
Mhm.
so one thing I do want to offer to help you along in this journey is when you are talking about your brand story, remember that it is essentially about what I said earlier, how you want to make your audience feel. As a
Mhm.
business owner, your customers are trying to learn from you how you can help them achieve their goals. And so if you're online and the words that you're using usually tend to revolve around you, if you're saying I or me all the time and it's about you, that's okay. But let's shift the focus as to how that connects to your customer. So kind of like I was telling my story earlier, yes, I left advertising. Yes, I do have this big background. Yes, I left and I met all these women around the world, but it doesn't end there. The story continues because I'm able to use my journey to now help other women who don't feel like they're alive or coming alive in their business. And here's the properties I have to help them. And so whenever you're looking at your Instagram or your website, and this isn't a hard and fast rule, but it might help those who need structure, like many of my friends, my Enneagram 1 friends out there, what's up? There's usually like you might have heard the jab, right hook. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So using the words you and yours like every 3 times for every time you say me or I is a soft rule that you can follow to see whether you're talking to your customer more than you're talking about yourself.
Yes, I think that that is something that is hard for people often is remembering that is trying to find that balance between people say my brand should be a reflection of me. It's about me. It's my business and all these things. But then remembering it's about you in relation to your ideal customer and how you can help them. And really when you tell stories, it always needs to be from the perspective of you are telling this story to your ideal customer. You're speaking directly to them, what's in it for them. Because I laugh all the time. There's this, when I worked at this Irish pub in college, there was this dude from Michigan so I always like kind of make jokes that Michigan people are bad storytellers, which you guys are not. I understand if you're from Michigan. And also I'm a very bad storyteller sometimes when I'm just like, yap in a way. So no judgment, my friends. But I worked at this Irish pub with this dude from Michigan, and he was just one of those storytellers who just like drone on and on and on about nothing, and I'm kind of just like sitting there being polite, nice little Midwest girl, nodding along and all that stuff. But he just like would talk like at you for 15 minutes. And then at the end of the story, I'm sitting there being like, what was there a point to that? Or like, what's going, like, why did you just tell that to me? You know what I mean? And so that's what I always like to remember. Don't be a Kevin. I don't think Kevin would ever listen to this, but don't be a Kevin was his name. Remember who you're speaking to when you're telling stories. So thank you so much for bringing that point up, lady.
Of course. And I guess in my point of view, I would call that your Filipino uncle because Filipino uncles at parties are just like, they don't remember what their point was. And you're like, why am I here? So that's a great story, Kinsey. So anyone listening, think of like the one person you would never want to be trapped in a room with because all they do is drone on and on. And hey, that's okay. Sometimes offline, people deserve to be heard. But when it comes to talking to your customers, remember that there's a point that you're getting to. And actually, I have a good analogy of this. I was at my husband's like annual family camp thing a weekend ago. I say camp thing because I'm like you, I like camping in the forest. They camp by the beach. So I'm like, is this really camping?
Okay. Uh-huh.
But his cousins are so amazingly talented in music. And one of my cousins, Aldridge, is such a good rapper. And he like was just spitting bars like fire, like out of nowhere. And I'm just between us here, I'm trying to learn how to rap better.
Yeah, girl. Okay.
Random side thing I want to do. And I'm like, how are you doing this, Aldridge? And he's like, it's easy. I just think of the ending word to each line, and then it's all about how do I get there. And so when you're telling a story, think about what is the point? What is the takeaway you want to leave your user with? And then make the rest of the journey there like a fun story or fun adventure.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Okay. I love this. I'm probably going to use that analogy. And also, that is a dream of mine. I would love to rap.
Let's do this.
I know. And I love that advice too. I've actually not really, I feel like I have these dreams, these deep-seated dreams, like personally and in my business too, that I'm like thinking about, oh, I would love to do that. And then all it takes is like Googling it. I just don't take the time to do that for like years. I did that the other day with, I've been wanting for a while, this is so random, but like to create GIFs with no background. I don't know if you use Canva often.
I saw that you love Canva.
Oh, girl. Yes. I've been using Canva so much, and they have the background remover tool or whatever for photos, which is wonderful. But I want one of those things for video, because then I also have like a Giphy account that I can upload GIFs. And so I want to make GIFs of myself dancing or so. I have no idea, and also for just like other reasons, but I've been wanting that for months and months and months. Every time I go to Canva, I'm like, why don't they have this yet? Why don't they have this? Guess what I did? Googled it the other day, and there's a free one online, super easy. So anyway, long story short, I want to rap as well. But I'm turning into the Filipino uncle right now, right? I love that analogy. But also, okay, so awesome. I was totally geeking out. I love analogies when it comes to that sort of stuff. Like, think of the last word, like in a rap, right? Think of the point that you're trying to make. What is the point of the post that I'm trying to make? I love doing this for content creation ideas when I'm like, okay, what is kind of my theme of the week? Or what do I need to create a post around right now? Today was confidence, right? And then I find a photo that fits with my grid, because I'm still one of those weirdos who likes to make my grid pretty, which like no one else would like look at my thing and think I was really curating it, but I do a little bit of color over here, a little bit, And so I found the photo that I wanted. I was like, okay, my theme is confidence. Okay, what story can I tell about confidence that also relates to this photo, right? Like, that's one of my favorite ways. And usually I end up coming up with a list of like 10 different stories I could tell, or 10 different posts I could create. And then I have to choose. And then I get decision fatigue and have to go take a nap or something. But okay, lady, thank you so much for sharing that. Long story short, I would love to hear just like a few of your favorite ways to use brand story in your business. Like, once people figure out, okay, this is like my core brand story, how do they use that in their business in the best way?
Oh yeah, totally. Two different ways. And one was just inspired by what you're saying right now. So for people listening, if you're like, oh, and I know you talk about this, Kinsey, but like content pillars. So say one of your pillars that you're trying to teach is confidence, like Kinsey was talking about. Pay attention to your life. This is one of the best tips I have about storytelling. Pay attention to your life, because writers say that what is specific is universal. So you may think that the story unfolding in your life today only relates to you, but I can tell you, like, the weirder it is, the more people are going to jump out and say, yes, that's me. And then you have your community, right? And so as you're going around your day and something happens to you, you can turn that into a nugget of info, a story basis. So for instance, Kinsey, tell me like a time that you're going around and you felt confident.
Yeah. A lot of my stories today, well, actually, I don't, I'm like, am I going to create this into a story? What I've been thinking about lately when it comes to confidence is the fine line between being confident and being like overdoing something, right? I was listening to the Brene Brown podcast or whatever. She was doing a series with her sisters this summer, and they were talking about setting boundaries. And they're like, it's really hard to set boundaries. But then when you find boundaries, all of a sudden you overdo boundaries in a way, right? And so they called it being a boundary bully, right? And I was like, oh my God, I totally did that. And it kind of got me thinking. And I was like, I also feel like I've done that with confidence a little bit in a way sometimes, where like, I think that in my confidence journey, I have definitely felt not confident at all at many points in my life. And then also sometimes when I want to cultivate confidence myself, I think that I overdo it sometimes in a way where I'm like, yes, confidence, maybe, which I don't think is a bad thing, but I think maybe it's like not forgetting to add the empathy piece in or something, like forgetting to say, this isn't always me, or something like that. So I guess, I don't know. Was that helpful? Sorry, lady.
Yeah,
I need another coffee today.
That inspired you about confidence. And then you use that on your social media post to inspire your users to confidence, I'm sure.
Oh, yes. Yeah, definitely a story that I actually haven't told that in a social media post quite yet, but
well, now
girl.
You have content creation 101. But no, like if you're listening to this, listen to the way that Kinsey told that story even. There's always to a story, a beginning, a middle, and an end, unless you're like Quentin Tarantino or some crazy person who's like really good at this. And like, like 500 Days of Summer, that movie blew my mind because they just like weave in and out of different timelines. But anywho, to any story, there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. In the way that Kinsey told her story, the beginning was listening to Brene Brown and being inspired and what that sparked in her. The middle is the context of now where that took her into her life and how she was able to reflect on confidence. And the ending, again, we talk about where do you end up in your content, your storytelling. It's always about what can the user take from this. And with Kinsey, it was being able to put it in a post to inspire her users to confidence. So one way that I really love to use storytelling for your brand is just talking about a day in your life. Like whether you're walking around and you run into a situation where it makes you realize your confidence or your resilience or strength, and you want to talk about that to inspire your audience, or you're listening to something like Kinsey was, and you took away a lesson that you also want to share. So maybe that's a way to think of storytelling in a more tangible and easy, digestible way too, is what do you want to share from your life and your ongoings that can help your users? And the second way that I really love to use brand story is when introducing yourself. Right? Whenever you go to an event and as the country opens up more and people are like, what do you do? We all like shudder, right? That's like one of the worst questions that people hate being asked. And I just like to say, that brand story that I was talking about earlier from the start of the two parts of what you do for others and who you are and how you got there. So simply saying, well, I believe that each of us were made for this. And so this is what I do for others. And this happened because I came from XYZ past. So whenever I introduce myself like that, people are instantly hooked. People have the attention span of a goldfish. It's like 6 seconds or less, Kinsey. It's crazy. And so Simon Sinek is an author who coined the start with why term, but I like to encourage people to start all their messaging with that. What is your why? Because if you have a why that is shared by others, it will hook them along for your journey and go with you to the end of your story, which usually ignites an action to work with you.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So many awesome tips in there, my friends. This is why I love Ché. I'm just over here like, yes. Okay, lady. Well, I could geek out with you about brand story all day and storytelling and all those things. And I definitely know my people will want to connect with you. But before we end this interview, I really do want to ask you kind of about your big lessons that you've learned in business. It's so funny. We were kind of emailing back and forth before we started the interview over the past few days. And you're like, oh yeah, girl, this interview is about to get real. I have been feeling like I wanted to quit my business this week, all these things. So I'd love to just share, or ask you to share some of your struggles and lessons and epiphanies in business, because that's so, so helpful, I think, in entrepreneurship to hear the stories of others, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, to be really raw and real, as business owners, like you mentioned, we have these ideas and we put them out. And when they fall flat, it can be devastating because we are essentially sharing a part of our heart, parts of our story that we want others to pick up what we're putting down. And just in the past week or few weeks, I think with what's going on in the country, a lot of business owners are hesitant to invest in themselves or in courses, et cetera. And so a program that I was really excited about launching this year that sold out last time got crickets this time. And we're still moving forward with just a very few people compared to last time. But in that moment, the fear of rejection just came over me. And to be honest, I was still even struggling with it this morning. And so I just want to share, you can be soaring one day as a business owner and the next be hit with a circumstance and think, I'm done. This is it. This is my swan song. And what I want to share with that is, oh man, the entrepreneur journey is a roller coaster because we are the ones sitting in our thoughts all the time. And so what did help me during this is realizing my own brand story, exactly as you said, Kinsey, of like, we forget to tell ourselves our own story sometimes. We're often telling stories to help others, but what about helping yourself? In that moment, I had to remember, like, what is my purpose and why am I here to run my business? I have always said that it's not about reaching the 1 million, it's about reaching the one. And so I had to really ask myself, am I willing to show up for the one business that I can impact today, even if it doesn't mean amassing the 6 figures that we always see across social media that is so popular? What does impact really mean to me? Do I really believe that I'm needed in this world and that my voice is important? Because that's what I teach other people. One of the biggest lessons I've learned is the very lessons that we're here to birth and to help others along their journey with are often the mountains that we come against ourselves, because we have to be authentic in what we overcome in order to lead others there. And so for me, realizing that my voice has purpose and matters and is helping someone has been really challenged in this season. But I also do remember asking other business owners, like, have you ever just wanted to quit and go get like a regular 9-to-5 job, Because I think about that every other freaking day when I'm like, this is rewarding. And then it's like, this is hard. And all my friends were like, oh yeah, I think about that all the time. And I'm like, why does nobody talk about this? Like on social media, we see, and Kinsey, because you work in feel good social, just comparisonitis is real. You can be so successful in your job and yet see, oh, someone else is quote unquote ahead of you. And that can really throw you off. So that's what I've been thinking about lately, and just being able to turn off the noise. I saw that you go offline on weekends. Just being able to step away from like this fabricated reality of what business and social media and branding is, and just remember like who I am, what is my purpose, that I do have people cheering me on, has been something that I'm walking through currently.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for sharing that, lady. Because yeah, for sure. So hits home, so resonates, so many of those things, right? I think it's scary for a lot of us too to share, like the crickets thing with the launch as well. Like that's something I've totally experienced as well, and it's scary to put yourself out there and then having to deal with the, oh my gosh, like it's like the imposter syndrome, the people hate me, the whatever it is. But I like exactly, we get all up in our heads, and it's so much better to I love that it all comes back to brand story, right? Because that's something that I deal with as well, is like getting caught up in the comparison game, being like, oh my gosh, but this, but that, but why can this person write a blog post in 5 minutes? Why can like all of these things, and remembering who you are. That's so funny. I was on a podcast this week called the Contagious Confidence Podcast. And so that's why confidence is on the brain right now. And that's really what confidence feels like to me, is that inner confidence, right? Is feeling solid in who you are, being able to take a deep breath, come back to yourself, be yourself, right? And just be relaxed in yourself. So thank you so much for sharing that, lady. And also I feel like I call my mom every freaking day. And I'm like, Mom, I just want to quit. Why am I doing this? Why did I like, also too, it's the whole thing for me. When you're an entrepreneur, your brain is just always going. Like you don't have a 9 to 5 anymore. You have a 24 hours. Like, you know what I mean? I always am like, I kind of miss the restaurant industry, just being able to go in, deal with a bunch of BS, like deal with all these people, walk away with a lot of cash and just like leave for the end of the day, and not have work be on my mind. Like that's most of the reason that I want to quit a lot of times. It's just like, I'm so tired of just thinking about my business all the stinking time,
That's so good. Thank you for sharing that true thought, because you can love something, but that doesn't mean that you don't get tired of it. Like people who are spouses and parents listening are like, yup, like I love my kids, but I don't like them a lot of the time. And so that is a good point. Like I think I saw a meme, like entrepreneurs are those who leave 40-hour work weeks just to work like 120 hours a week.
Yeah, I know. I know. It's hilarious. Actually, yeah, that's kind of the first time I've like started thinking, I feel like we're both language nerds and stuff. So now I'm like, okay, how can we start creating content around this whole idea? You see, like so many digital entrepreneurs out there in my space and your space too, let's like leave the 9 to 5, help us I quit my 9 to 5, all these things. But yeah, they don't talk about the reality after the fact of this is so good. Now my brain is churning like, okay, content. See, that's what happens. That's what happens. Every conversation I have, I'm like, oh, could that be an Instagram post? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think we're both in the field of just trying to make our fields more honest, Kinsey. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I saw a friend recently who was doing something beautiful in the entrepreneur space. And I saw her and I said, how is that going? And she said, I'm going back to this job because people don't tell you how hard entrepreneurship is. And that just pissed me off, Kinsey, because I'm like, why are we putting on these fronts, these filters over our lives online? Like, just because I'm having a hard day doesn't mean that I'm not great at what I do.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's a quote that we need to put on a freaking shirt or something.
Girl, I'm going to make a graphic for you.
I'll post that. I'm going to tag you.
Yeah.
But it's so true. And something that's been really resonating with me lately is one of the most radical things we can tell is the truth.
Mm.
We think in marketing that we have to lie about ourselves or our income or our capabilities, when really, I hope that you listening, if you take one thing away from this conversation, my friend, my listener, or Kinsey's best friend, just know that you are so capable and you don't have to be anything more than who you are. Bring out more of who that person is, because the world is waiting for that person to come alive and shine.
Oh, okay. Mic drop. There we go. That's it.
That's the shirt that we're going to wear.
That's the shirt. I know. Well, I have so many things on my to-do list. And as an Enneagram 7, it's like idea. Oh, shiny object. You know what I mean? And so I've actually been meaning to update my Feel Good Social podcast merch. So that actually might become a shirt, girl. I'll totally give you shout out and props and stuff like that. Okay, my lady, I could talk to you for so long, but we do have to cut off this interview at some point. I will probably have to bring you on for another future podcast interview as well. But could you please share with all of my awesome listeners where they can find you, connect with you, all those things, because I know they'll totally want to do that.
Well, thank you. I am on Instagram as well as Clubhouse, if anyone still goes on that, at comealive.co. And that's also our URL, comealive.co.
Yay. Thank you so much, lady. And yes, we will totally have to bring you back on to chat about Clubhouse. I have not been using Clubhouse. I would kind of decided, boundaries, social media, I couldn't handle Clubhouse and stuff. So totally will bring you on for another one. But thank you so much, Ché. I so appreciate you.
Thank you, Kinsey. This was such a joyful part of my day.
How wonderful was Ché, you guys? I loved chatting with her so much. And I was laughing a little bit because I was having one of those days where it was kind of like loopy brained in a way. Later in that day, I was like talking with my friend Nikita, being like, are you having one of those what days is it this week too? I don't even know if I said that right, my friend. Anyway, I hope that you enjoyed that conversation. I hope that you connect with me on Instagram at FeelGoodSocial and with Ché at Come Alive. We would absolutely love to see you there. And I will catch you next time I catch you, my friend. Thanks so much for listening, my friend. For show notes and a whole lot of other awesome freebies, visit feelgoodsocial.com. Simply go to feelgoodsocial.com for all the goods.